okay, here's this really, really crazy thing. There's this woman, she's been mummified. This is nuts. Let's now go back in time and figure out how we got here.
This is Mother God.
She is the leader of an organization called Love Has Won. She has a divine plan to help humanity.
19 billion years old, reincarnated Jesus.
What stood out to you about the Mother God story that really separated it from other cult stories we've been hearing about lately?
My brother has like horrible documentary ideas for me all the time. And he called me and he was like, you should find a doomsday cult that thinks the world's going to end in like 8 to 12 months and film and in bed with them and film, the world not ending, presumably, and the reckoning after that. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I called a bunch of New Age religious scholars looking for this kind of doomsday cult. And this professor at UT Austin told me that there was this cult where the leader had just passed away like a couple weeks ago. And so presumably the members of this group were like in the midst of this kind of reckoning because they thought a spaceship was going to come and pick her up, and that wasn't happening. And so I thought, okay, I can film. I was interested in like the way belief works and the way that what happens to people when they're forced to recognize the fallibility of their beliefs. And so then I went and started hanging out with the people in Love Is One, with the idea of making a verite film about that reckoning. And then that reckoning kind of just didn't happen.
When you started to speak with some of the people from Love Has One, how long did it take to kind of gain their trust? And were they kind of initially hesitant, or were they kind of willing to kind of open up about their beliefs like from pretty early on?
They were immediately willing to open up about their beliefs. I mean, they'd spent all day kind of live streaming about their beliefs. The dissemination of their beliefs in a public forum was like that's what they do. That's what they wanted to do.
I said, Mom, it was me. And she said, I know, bitch. The angels told me.
All this is going on YouTube. Mama don't lie. Mama don't lie, bitches.
A big angle to this is obviously like the money they were raising and where some of those funds were going. The capitalism angle to this piece.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about why that piqued your interest and like why that was interesting for you to explore?
I think I was interested both. Like I was interested in the capitalism, both in terms of the material circumstances that made people go into Love Is One. So like the ways in which kind of American life is really tough for a lot of people. And there's not a lot of healthcare, mental health care. And then once they were in the group, I was interested in the way that the kind of capitalism persisted within the group and the same kind of power dynamics and money dynamics that existed outside of Love Is One kind of formed anew inside of Love Is One.
One of the things that was really, I think, immediately gripping about this documentary was your decision to kind of start at the end and start with very unnerving revelation of what Mother God's physical state was, and obviously the mystery surrounding that. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to frame it that way and why you felt it was very important from a storytelling standpoint?
Oh, it was like it's like this kind of silly idea that I had when I started making the film, where I was like, oh, of course, everyone will have heard about this story, so I should just get that over with. But then, 2 years go by and everyone's forgotten about that story and no one would have heard about that story. So it was like a decision that was made very early on with this idea of, let's just get that over with because it's the only thing anyone would have known. And it also like forms, in a storytelling sense, it forms this question where it's kind of like, okay, here's this really, really crazy thing. There's this woman, she's been mummified. This is nuts. Let's now go back in time and figure out how we got here. So it was like it posed a question and created a narrative tension that then kind of played out over the rest of the series.
It's shocking, I think, to say the least. But I think to me, what was much more shocking was what led to that circumstance, crossing multiple state lines with the dead body being a major one of them. Like, how are you kind of learning about that? Were you pulling a lot of that information from people within the cult? Tell me a little bit about like that research process.
The interviews that I conducted with the cult were like my research interviews. So those were the interviews that I did like 3 weeks after Mother God, after Amy Carlson passed away. And so all of those interviews were just me getting all of the information that I used to construct the story. So it's kind of like they told me the story and then I kind of brought it to life with archival, but it's just as they told it to me. And then, I mean, there was a process of like fact checking the whole thing, cross-referencing people's POVs, finding the best storyteller for one specific instance.
There's obviously so many hours and hours and hours, days worth of footage that they were broadcasting online. Like, how much of that were you kind of crawling through to like either cross-reference things? Like
All
they
of
might.
it was a nightmare. I mean, it was 2,700 videos, all of which are like 5 hours long.
Wow.
So it was thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of footage. So, I mean, we had all these spreadsheets, like, here's what happens in this live stream at this time code. And like a whole job of it, like in the edit team was going through the live streams. And then it was this process of kind of like, you know, in these interviews that I did with the people in Love Is One, it was charting their storytelling. And then it was finding the moment in the archive that like matched with whatever it was that they were telling me about in that story. And that's kind of was the way that I went about constructing the series.
And then I know that there's, a lot of various conspiracies that they're speaking about through there. Can you tell me a little bit about your decision to kind of, I guess, leave some of that to, what was said on those live streams versus like wading into that within the doc and how you tried to balance that?
I didn't want to be an unwitting platform for beliefs that could be bigoted or harmful or violent, like, or could like do actual harm in the world. I didn't want my show to be a platform for that. So that's why I made that decision.
How does your definition of a cult evolve during the process of making this doc?
Oh my God. So Hope, one of the characters in Love Is One, or one of the subjects of Love Is One, always says, well, culture is a cult, like it's all a cult. And you can like pick what you want to worship in life. You can be a lawyer and worship the law, or you can be a farmer and worship the soil and the grain, or you can, just be your average American capitalist and like worship the buying of your home and the payment of your mortgage and your retirement and whatever. So I do think that there's you get to make choices about what you worship in life. The cults are like kind of extreme embodiments of that, but hopefully they reflect back to us rather, something that we're seeing in ourselves or in the way that we go through life. What really interested me, just to go back to your first question about like what interested me about Love Is One versus other cults, it's like the internet cult of it really interested me because we all live in really individual realities and we kind of choose our own reality. And so the internet with the algorithm and the nature of the algorithm kind of allows you to like, it forms your own reality. It puts you in a really siloed reality where the algorithm's like guessing what you like and what your interests are and what your beliefs are. And it's feeding you content that like reinforces whatever it thinks your beliefs are. And in that way, like the cult, a cult forming from that was really interesting to me at this political moment.
It's still out there. Like the cult's still out there. You guys released this, obviously caught a lot of attention and fanfare. What has come to light since you guys have released it that's really like just kind of interests you or anything that like maybe was left out of the documentary that's kind of come up in the aftermath since?
Father God and Father Multiverse continue to live together. A lot of people in the group continue to live together, kind of all over. I'm still in touch with a bunch of the people who were in the film because, I care for them and want good things for them. People are still kind of together. Some people have moved home and some people are still together. But like no one has decided like, oh, this was a load of crap and Mother God's not real. Like everyone is still believing.
And have they like talked to you about like watching the cult? Watching the documentary?
Yeah, I mean, I watched it with them.
Okay.
I watched it with both Amy Carlson's family and I watched it with everybody who was in the film.
Wow. Are you close with Amy's family?
We became close, yeah, while making the film. I mean, I really I spent a lot of time talking to them and trying to draw out Amy's story and get to know them and understand some of the social and political circumstances that made Amy kind of go down the wormhole.
And I felt like in the doc, there's obviously a lot of empathy for Amy and for her story. Do you feel like the audience response to documentary has been one of empathy? Or is there anything that's really surprised you about the viewer response?
I mean, I think people are shocked by it. I think I've gotten a lot of like, I'm shocked, I'm disturbed, that was depressing, that was intense. I mean, my hope is that it's kind of about America and about the way that we exist now with the internet and our stage of capitalism. I mean, like that's what my hope is. And a lot of the conversations I've had have been about that. So that's been really encouraging.
What did you learn from making Love Is One that as a filmmaker, you'll take into that next documentary project?
Hire a really good archival producer immediately. Don't try to do it yourself. I like tried to organize all of the archival stuff myself. It was a disaster. You know, like I said before, I thought this was going to be a verite film about people coming out of something, and you know, 4 years later they're still not out of it, or whatever you want to say is in it or out of it. And so I think that there's just sitting back and letting the story unfold and watching the way that reality kind of exists, you'll find something that's much more interesting than what you think the story is.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. If you go in with like, this is exactly what I'm going to make, and this is what the story is, there's a chance that you'll miss what's happening entirely.
This is the galactic A-team. So those were Mom's main ambassadors. They were with her all the time. That's Saint Germain, and that's obviously Robin Williams.
With all the celebrities and like the picture with all
Galactic A-team?
Yeah, exactly. Which one like kind of made you laugh the hardest looking at that?
Oh, great question. I'm John Candy.
Okay.
Like I love John Candy. I don't know, Steve Irwin. I also love Steve Irwin. Like everyone who worked on the film we all have our own Galactic 18 boards.
When God loves you, the pressure comes.
All this energy, it belongs to us. And if you're not in right action, you're out.
It eventually took her over.
All hell broke loose.
I've been going through some stuff.
This is my fucking house.
We are gonna give you guys the truth.